Blog Talk Radio.
Nyamewaa Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit Nyyehyee AMANSEM da Medinde Ojirafo Kwesi Ranehmpata Akan Akwamumayana Manuka Etifi Mu Ojirafo Odwiraman Mu. Greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit, meaning Africans, black people. Today is AMANSEM Day, Affairs of the Nation Day. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Ranehmpata Akan. Odwiraman of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Within Odwiraman, the Purified Nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you once again for tuning into the broadcast. The chat room is open. If you have any questions or comments and you'd like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one quickly in Blog Talk. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. This is our 4th broadcast of the week. We typically have 4 broadcasts on a weekly basis, 4 different broadcasts on a weekly basis. On Joda, on Monday nights, we have Akanfo Nanasom, Ancient Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion, where we deal specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion, first and foremost because we are Akan, and secondly because of the misinformation that has been propagated in this hemisphere as well as on the continent by those who have been infected with white culture. The propagation of misinformation regarding Akan ancestral religion, culture, philosophy, cosmology, ritual practice, and so forth. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion. That takes us back to our ancestral origins in ancient Kanat, which is ancient Nubia, and some of our people migrating into Kemet, so-called Egypt, but our people a couple thousand years ago migrating from ancient Kanat, the Kanat Empire, so-called Nubian Empire, migrating west, reestablishing themselves on the continent, in the western part of the continent, reestablishing the Kanat or Ghana Empire. About 1,000 years later, because of Muslim invasions, some of our people migrated from the Empire of Ghana further south towards the regions of contemporary Cote d'Ivoire and Republic of Ghana, and reestablished the Akan or Akana Empire in the forest belt regions and savanna regions and further south. Hundreds of years after that, some of our people were taken forcibly from those regions during warfare as prisoners of war and forced into the Western Hemisphere to North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. This is how some of our people, as Akan people, ended up in the Western Hemisphere. Those of us who maintained our ancestral religious traditions, ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, Akanfo Nanasom, are those who were empowered and guided by the Abosom and Nananom Nsamanfo, by the deities, and our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors to wage war against the whites and their offspring and force the end of enslavement through taking up metal armaments, fashioning metal armaments, as well as chemical and biological warfare through root work and so forth, poisoning, killing our enemies, weakening our enemies and killing our enemies. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion. We deal with the nature and function of the Abosom, the deities who govern creation, the nature of the Nananom Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, the nature of Nyamewaa and Nyame, the great mother and the great father, supreme being who function together as a unit. Nyankompon and Nyankonton, the creator and creatress, who are subordinate to the supreme being, Nyamewaa-Nyame. So this is what we deal with on Joda Monday nights. On Tuesday night, we have Ojira, which means purification. We deal with ancestral religion in general, not just the Akan expression, but wherever Afurakani people exist in the world, on the continent of Afuraitkaitnit, as well as in the Western Hemisphere. When we maintain our ancestral traditions, we can reestablish order in our lives. We show that Afurakani or Afuraitkaitnit African ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives. Ancestral religion, in essence, is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance, these are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion, of Nationalism. We say that Ojira, purification, operationalizes Nationalism. Purification operationalizes ancestral religion, our practice of ritually incorporating law and ritually restoring balance. Our ancestral culture is the divine acceptance, the law, the love of order, and the divine rejection, hatred, repulsion of disorder and its purveyors. We seek to align every thought, intention, and action with divine order every moment of every day. This is our ancestral culture as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. We execute our divine function in creation that has been assigned to us, allotted to us by the Supreme Being, and we do that in the context of aligning every thought, intention, and action with divine order. When we engage in legitimate mistakes, then we engage the ritual process of incorporating law ritually and restoring balance ritually so that we can get back on track with our culture, our way of life, which is executing our divine function in creation as cells within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, executing our specific function as specific, unique cells, and doing that in the context of divine order, aligning every thought, every intention, and every action with divine order. This is how ancestral religion impacts every aspect of our lives. So on the Ojira broadcast, we deal with that. We deal with text, ritual, and oral ritual practices, text from ancient Kemet, Kanit, as well as the ritual and orature that comes from the continent of Afuraitkaitnit, as well as in our traditions that we have maintained in our blood circles in the Western Hemisphere. As we have shown and proven in our publications, Hoodoo is the Akan tradition in North America, Juju is the Yoruba tradition in North America, Wanga is the Ovambo, a portion of the Gullah tradition in North America, Voodoo is the Ebe and Fon tradition in North America, Ngangan is the Fang tradition in North America, Grigri is the Bambara tradition in North America, the Gola and Kisi tradition is the Gullah Geechee tradition in North America. We maintained our ancestral religious practices through our blood circles, intergenerationally and transcarnationally. We have a spirit genetic inheritance. We are not dependent on anyone outside of our blood circles, be they in the Caribbean or in Afuraitkaitnit, Africa, for our traditions, our ancestral religion, our initiations. We're not dependent on anyone outside of our direct ancestral blood circles to maintain our traditions. We have maintained them for 300 years here, and it was based on the foundation of that maintenance that we freed ourselves from enslavement, and it's based on that successful model that we will establish our independence, our sovereignty, and the defense of that sovereignty. That's what we deal with on Benada, Abenada Tuesday nights with Ojira. On our Wukuda, Akurda Wednesday nights, we have the Egua Marketplace Day, where we showcase Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit businesses, organizations, and institutions, those who are serving our community in a positive capacity, and those whose ancestral religious values inform their service to the community. So we've had a number of individuals come onto the show to share with us the work that they're doing in the community and taking questions and so forth so you can support their businesses. We have also published the Okom Economic Development Model rooted in our ancestral religious values. Part of the operation within that model is to starve the beast and feed the pride. That means we take an assessment of what funds we would have potentially wasted with the whites and their offspring, and then we starve the beast and feed the pride. We reallocate those funds away from the white business and direct them to the business organization or institution of the week. And we choose one business organization or institution per week for optimal capital infusion. When you spend $10 in a white business and you redirect that $10, you starve that white beast and feed the pride and direct the $10 to the black business. That's a transfer of $10 of capital. When 1,000 people engage that process, then $10,000 is removed from white businesses and directed to a black business. $10,000 in the course of 7 days. That allows them to hire permanently within the community, from within the community, expand their products and services to us, serve us at a greater capacity, and so forth. If we do not engage that process of starving the white beast and feeding the pride, then by default we leave the $10,000 and overall hundreds of billions of dollars in the hands of our absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring, and we are thus financing our own oppression. So we deal with that on Egwada Marketplace Day. Today is Yauda, Thursday, which is also called Yada and Abada, based on the Abosom, Yao, Ya, and Abba, which is Heru, Wachet, and Nekabet. We have AMANSEM, which means affairs of the nation. We deal with issues that are impacting the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit Nation in general, and in particular, Odwiraman, the purified Odwiraman Nation. Oman also means land of the setting sun, the west. In the language of ancient Kemet, Jira means purification, Mine means nation, polity, Mine also means land of the setting sun, the west. Odwiraman is the purified Odwiraman Nation, Mine in the land of the setting sun, the extreme west. This is the designation of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. Those of us who were forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era, but those who maintained our ancestral religious practices, and as we said, based on the foundation of those ancestral religious practices, we were empowered and guided to wage war and force the end of enslavement. When we understand what an Oman, a nation is, it's a living, breathing entity. Like an organ within your body, it is a structure governed by specific Abosom, Orisha, Vodou forces in nature. The cells that are part of the organ are children of the organ. They serve the organ's functions, and as they serve the organ's functions, then they're serving the whole body at the same time. When we are drawn together by our Nananom Nsamanpo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, when we're drawn together in a specific region of the Earth Mother, Amansesew, she draws us to a region guided by our ancestresses and ancestors, and the Abosom, the forces of nature, as they manifest in their unique expressions in that particular region of the Earth Mother's body. And we take in the plant life and animal life and mineral life and so forth, consuming that within our bodies. Then we blend ancestral blood circles as a collective within that specific region of the Earth Mother's body. Then we forge a locative identity, an identity rooted in that region of the Earth Mother's body, at that frequency of energy that's manifest in that region of our body, and the plant life, animal life, and mineral life that we take into our system that makes up our cells of our body, inclusive of sperm and ovum, that will later produce other children that radiate and resonate at the frequency of that region of the Earth Mother. We become possessed by, through ritual spirit possession, the manifestation of the Abosom, the Orisha Vodou, in that region of the Earth Mother's body. We blend ancestral blood circles in that region and take in that unique configuration of energy that forges a unique locative identity in that region of the Earth Mother. So we have taken up residence in the Western Hemisphere. Those of us who listen to our Nananom Nsamanpo, our spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, we are drawn together and we coalesce. We have blended ancestral blood circles. We have possessed and communicated with, invoked, and been possessed by the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, in this region of the Earth Mother in their unique manifestations. We have invoked the Earth Mother, the fertile Earth Mother, Amansesew, and the barren Earth Mother, the strong, stern judge Earth Mother, Amansesew, taking that energy into our blood, into our clans, and our progeny has manifested that we are Odwiraman, a unique collective of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people within the larger collective of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people wherever we exist in the world. We have our own unique expression of culture, our own unique expression of ancestral religion, and we're not dependent on anybody outside of our blood circle for our culture or our ancestral religious practices. We don't imitate people on the continent. We don't imitate people anywhere else in the world with regard to culture or ancestral religion. We have maintained our culture and ancestral religion here in our blood circle, so we look to our direct blood ancestresses and ancestors for our ancestral religion and culture in its unique manifestation. And we approach our issues, solve our problems based on that reality and based on that locative identity, based on that newly formed AMANNE or nation that we have developed right here in the Western Hemisphere, Odwiraman. So we take the approach of AMANNE, which means Nationism, and that is the purification of nationalism. We're not talking about secular nationalism. Nationism is an approach to existence where we understand the ancestral religious foundation of creation and the issues that we deal with. Part of that process, of course, and the subject we're talking about tonight, the issues that arise, many of the issues that we have can be traced back to our conception of morality. And we are dealing with ancestral moral reversion within Odwiraman in the context of the AKRADINBOSOM, the Abosom, the forces in nature that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies which govern the 7-day week, that natural cycle. When we approach life from a grounded moral perspective, then we build ourselves, strengthen ourselves individually. We strengthen our relationships, our marriages. We strengthen our families, our children, and so forth. And then strong families with a strong moral, ethical foundation connect with other strong Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit families with a strong ethical, moral foundation. And then we can build, we can engage the process of Amansesew, nation building, restoration. If we do not have a strong ethical, moral foundation, then the approach and the activities with regard to nation building at some point fracture and fall apart. So we're going to go to our AMANSEM page, website. We're going to give you the direct link to the article that we're going to be examining. And we'll place that link in the chat room. And that article is called AKRADINBOSOM and Suban Pa, Ancestral Moral Reversion in Odwiraman, the Purified Nation. Within Odwiraman, Purified Nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Africans, black people in the Western Hemisphere, we reject without qualification lying, stealing, drinking, smoking, drug use of any kind, promiscuity, interracialism, bisexuality, homosexuality, other forms of sexual deviance, lust, sexual abuse, physical abuse, child abuse, verbal abuse, gluttony, skin bleaching, quote-unquote cosmetic surgery, procedures, implants, injections, etc., hair straightening, fake hair, pseudo-religions inclusive of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hebrewism, Moorishism, pseudo-Native Americanism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, Taoism, extraterrestrialism, sex cult, pseudo-spirituality, drug addict, pseudo-spirituality, and their pseudo-esoteric iterations, pseudo-philosophies such as integration, loving our enemies, unconditional love, messianic nationalism, etc., and the promotion of or desire for any of these things by our men, women, and children. Our rejection of these behaviors and ideas is an ancestral religious conviction rooted in our morality. Our morality is an expression of our capacity to align with Nyamewaa-Nyame Nhyehyee, which means the Supreme Being's order. Nhyehyee means arrangement, order. Nyame is the great mother. Nyame is the great father. Nyamewaa is the great mother. Nyamewaa-Nyame is the great mother and great father, or the Supreme Being's Nhyehyee, or arrangement, or order, divine order. It is called Amannet, Amansesew in ancient Kemet, Nyamewaa-Nyame Nhyehyee in Akan. Our morality is the expression of our alignment with the Abosom, the deities who regulate divine order in creation. This is a return to our critical ethical foundations. It is ancestral moral reversion. And the key here is with regard to the AKRADINBOSOM, these are the divinities, major divinities governing all cycles in creation, natural cycles in creation. When we align with the forces in nature who are the embodiments of divine order in creation, then we can align with the order in creation and we can replicate that order in our lives. This is where our morality is derived from. Suban Pa, meaning good or sacred, Pa, character, Suban, in the Akan language is a mode of existence wherein we recognize the divine order of creation and how our thoughts, intentions, and actions align with this order. When we find that our thoughts, intentions, and actions circumvent or violate divine order, we engage the ritual process, as we said earlier, Nationalism, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Ancestral Religion, to ritually incorporate divine law and ritually restore divine balance to our lives. This sustains our Suban Pa, our good or sacred character, and thus our morality in the true sense. So when we engage ritual practice, the purpose of that is to realign ourselves with order. The notion of realigning yourself with order and seeking to realign yourself with order because you recognize that is how you are designed to function in creation, that is a manifestation of Suban Pa, or good character. You sustain your good character through the practice of ancestral religion, the ritual incorporation of divine law, and the ritual restoration of divine balance. The whites and their offspring as spirits of disorder who incarnate as spirits of disorder without exception, deliberately promote the false idea that morality is relative, and further that truth is relative. This is because the whites and their offspring are incapable, racially and spiritually, of aligning with and communicating with or becoming possessed by the Abosom, the deities, the Orisha, the Vodou, the Ntoru, so-called Neteru, the divine spirit forces in creation who are the embodiments of divine order in creation. They do not have that capacity. The forces in nature that animate the earth, mother, the core of earth, the mantle, the upper mantle, the crust, the upper crust, black soil, red soil, hills, mountains, fire, the atmosphere, oceans, rivers, the magnetosphere of earth, the various planets, the black substance of space, the sun, the moon, the various stars, and so forth, these spiritual forces that animate all of these aspects of creation, that regulate order within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, we can become possessed by them ritually. And once that possession takes place, these agents of order are operating within our bodies and within our community, within our people's collective. And then we can align with the divine order that they are the embodiment of. And then we can replicate that order in our behavior and in our social structure. The whites and their offspring cannot be possessed by nor communicate with the forces in nature. They are repelled by the forces of nature because they're forces of divine order and they repel disorder. The whites and their offspring are spirits of disorder. So they're repelled. So they cannot communicate with the deities. Therefore, they cannot align themselves with order. Therefore, they cannot replicate an order which they cannot align with. The Abosom, which is the Akan term for deities in Yoruba, it's the Orisha, also Irumole. In the Igbo tradition, the Arusi is the title for deities, and so forth. In ancient Kemet, it's the Ntoru, mispronounced Neteru. In the Fon and Efe traditions, they're the Vodou. The Abosom, the deities, are the children of Nyamewaa and Nyame, Amanne and Amanne, the great mother and great father who comprise the Supreme Being. Nyamewaa and Nyame are called Amanne and Amanne in the culture of ancient Kemet and Kanit, Egypt and Nubia. They're called Mawu and Lisa in the Ebe and Fon culture of Odun. They're called Komosu and Chukwu in the Igbo culture. They're called Olokun and Olorun in the Yoruba culture, and so forth. The Abosom, Orisha, Vodu, Arusi are the divine organs within the great divine body of Nyamewaa and Nyame. And of course, in this article, we show a picture from a relief sculpture of AMANNE sitting on her throne and Amen sitting on his throne. There's never been a time when there was just Amen or Amen Ra. There's never been a time when there was just Amannet, also called Amannet Raet. Amen and Amannet are the great mother and great father, two halves of the divine whole. They have always been. Just as your organs are children of the greater being, you, and regulate order within your body, so are the Abosom, the deities, the divine organs regulating order within the great divine body of creation. They are the spirits animating the stars, suns, moons, planets, black substance of space, oceans, rivers, mountains, fire, atmosphere, earth's core, mantle, etc. As we said, we as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Africans, black people, as well as plant life, animal life, and mineral life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life only. We are cells within the greater organs. As cells, we are also grandchildren within and of the great divine body of Nyamewaa-Nyame. So your body as an Afurakani male is a microcosm of Amen. Your body as an Afuraitkaitnit female is a microcosm of Amannet, the great mother. The organs within your body are smaller bodies within your greater body. They regulate order within the greater body. The deities, the divine forces in creation, are the organs within the great divine body of Amannet and Amen, and they regulate order within the great divine body. Your organs give birth to children, which are cells, and the cells are organelles. They serve the organs, and as they serve the organs, their parents, they serve the greater body, which is you. We are the cells, the organelles within the great divine organs, the deities. We as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, as well as plant life, animal life, and mineral life, we are the cells, the organelles within the organs, children of the Abosom, the Orisha, the deities. When we serve our parent Abosom, deities, organs, then we're serving the great divine body at the same time. When, as we say here in the article, when cells live in harmony with the organ or organ system of which they are a component part, when they function according to their nature, design, they are manifesting Suban Pa, good or sacred character. And the key here is Su means essential nature, and Abain means a gate or a fence or a structure. Suban, the word meaning character, means the gate or the structure, Abain, around Su, your essential nature. So you can have Suban Pa, which is good character, or Suban Bani, which is evil, disordered character. The term Bani or Ban in Akan means evil or wicked, disorder. The same term Bani, as well as the version Ban in ancient Kemet, in the Medutu, the hieroglyphs in the language, means evil or wicked and so forth, because of course the Akan language, as well as other languages across the continent, are directly descendant of that ancient language. So all of those root words you find in these various languages. You can have Suban character, that is Pa, good, orderly, or Suban Bani character, that is perverse, disordered, and thus evil, wicked, and so forth. Bad character. So your essential nature, Su, has a structure around it, which is the Abain, the fence, the structure. When the cells live in harmony with the organ or organ systems of which they are a component part, when they function according to their nature, their design, they are manifesting Suban Pa. The structure around their essential nature is manifest in an orderly fashion, so it's good character, good or sacred character. If they begin to circumvent that assigned role, they create disorder within themselves first, then the organ, and then the body as a whole. They are thus either repaired or if their condition is beyond repair, they are eliminated by the immune and lymphatic systems. This is Suban Pa. This is good sacred character. This is morality. The same is true with us. The eradication of cancerous cells is a manifestation of divine order. The killing of cancerous cells is a manifestation of divine order and Suban Pa, good or sacred character. That's Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African black people, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit African black people only. We ourselves or children of specific divine organs, specific Abosom, specific Orisha, specific Vodou, specific Arusi, specific Ntoru, Ntorutu, and so forth. We function in harmony with our nature, design, and thus the divine organ of which we are a component part. We are given a function to execute in creation, pre-incarnation. Before we incarnate into the world, we are ancestors and ancestresses living in the ancestral realm. Before we are drawn into a womb of one of our descendants, we are drawn first to Nyamewaa-Nyame Nhyehyee and AMANNE. They give us the divine function we are to execute in creation, meaning within their great divine body. What kind of cell within the great divine body are we to be? If we're an immune system cell, we're going to be naturally inclined towards immune functions in society, so traditional policing functions, military functions, and so forth. If we are excretory system cells, we're going to be inclined towards excretory functions, so we'll be inclined towards healing arts and so forth, healers, healeresses, and so forth. What kind of cell within the great divine body needs to take up residence in this particular clan that you're going to be reincarnating through? You're given that divine function or assignment that's infused within your spirit. And the way it's infused within your spirit by Nyamewaa-Nyame is that they assign a ka or kaet, the male and female terms for soul, called kra and krawa in Akan and Ori Inu, the inner head in Yoruba, and Selido in Vodun. The soul or the ka, the kaet, is a deity that the Supreme Being directs to install himself, if you're a male, or herself, if you're a female, in the head region of your spirit. It's like your spirit's brain. It's the divinity taking up residence in the head region. The divine function you are given to execute into the world is infused within that divinity, that force in nature that's dwelling in the head region. Just like you have a brain, which is a smaller entity dwelling in your head region that has the blueprint for everything that should take place in your body and has all of the instructions for all of the other organs and glands to obey. You have a spirit's brain, a spiritual structure of force and entity dwelling in your head region of your spirit body. That is the ka, the kaet, the kra, the krawa, and it contains the blueprint, what your divine function is, what kind of cell within the great divine body you are to be. That is infused within that divinity that's dwelling in your head region. Once that deity takes up residence in your head region, installs itself within your head region, now you're a spirit with a soul. Now you're a whole spiritual entity. Then you are sent by Nyamewaa-Nyame, the Supreme Being, back into the ancestral realm amongst the Nsamanpo, the ancestresses and ancestors, to await Bebra, or rebirth, or reincarnation. And then you are drawn into one of your descendants' wombs, one of your great-great-great-great-great-granddaughters who's grown up, married. They copulate. That energy is generated magnetically. You are drawn into the womb, take up residence in that conceived zygote, and 40 weeks later you're born back into the world for the first time in 100 or more years. You're a spirit operating through a physical body. You have a ka, a soul, a divine consciousness dwelling in your head region. It is a male divinity if you're male, a female divinity if you're female. As you're growing and developing, initially you experience that ka, that soul, or kaet, as a strong force that pulls you in your head in one direction or the other, pulls you towards certain thoughts, intentions, and behaviors, actions, and repels you from other thoughts, intentions, and actions. As you grow and develop spiritually and you engage the ritual practice, you experience the soul, the ka, the kaet, that force in the head region, not just as a pull, but you can communicate directly with that deity. He will show himself to you and communicate directly with you if you're male. She will show herself to you and communicate directly with you if you're a female. So this is what we're talking about with regard to the soul, the divine consciousness. Now, as we've said, we are children, cells within the organs, the deities. We function in harmony with our nature, our design, and thus the divine organ of which we are a component part. This supports the divine order of creation within ourselves, our community, and Amansesew and Asaseya, the earth mother Abosom. Asasew is the fertile earth mother. Asaseya is the barren earth mother who receives the corpses at funerals and, of course, transforms that corpse into a living, a shrine for the spirit of the person. We pour libation at the gravesite, or in the past we've mummified the body of the person and crystallized that body, hardened that body, and made it a crystal, a shrine, a magnetic shrine, the most powerful and potent shrine for the ancestor or ancestress to communicate with. Asasew and Asaseya in the Akan language is Onile and Nyamewaa. In the Yoruba tradition, they are Asase Nebetepet and Asase Nebetpet in ancient Kemet, the wives of Atem and Kepra. So it's the same deities across the board. If we make legitimate mistakes, we engage in the ritual process, Nationalism, Ancestral Religion, to ritually incorporate divine law and ritually restore divine balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions. Just like the cells in the body, if they circumvent divine order, they are repaired, but if they reach a condition where they are beyond repair, then the immune and lymphatic systems work together to isolate those cells, destroy them, kill them, and expel them from the body. We as cells, when we engage in legitimate mistakes, then we engage the ritual process to realign ourselves with order. If we go beyond those legitimate mistakes, engage in disorder deliberately and consistently, then we become repulsive to the Ka. The Ka, the deity dwelling in the head region, it will separate itself from us. That deity, the male divinity or female divinity, the female will separate from us and go back to Nyamewaa-Nyame Nhyehyee, Amen, and Lisa, Chukwu and Komosu, and so forth. And now we're a spirit without a Ka, a Kayak, a spirit without a soul, like an individual with their head cut off. We're a spirit of disorder. And when we're a spirit of disorder, then we are slated for eradication. And the divine immune and lymphatic systems within the great divine body, governed by Benna and Abena, the name of these deities in the Akan tradition, they're called Ogun and Iyami-Abeni in the Yoruba tradition. They're called Heru-Bedeti and Sekhmet in ancient Kemet. These are the male and female forces that govern the divine immune and lymphatic systems within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. And they eradicate disordered cells, plant life, animal life, mineral life, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life, but of course the cancerous cells, the whites and their offspring. So when we fall into disorder, we engage in criminality like child molestation or rape or things like that, then we go beyond the condition where we can be repaired, and we are slated for eradication, extermination, to be killed and expelled from the communal social body by the deities Benna and Abena and their children, which are their vessels. Those who are children of Benna and Abena, like a Kwa Benna or an Abena, a child of Ogun, a child of Iyami-Abeni, and so forth, they carry out those exterminations or eradications or divine killings through their children very often. Suban Pa, good or sacred character, is thus a reflection of our harmonizing our thoughts, intentions, and actions every moment of every day with divine order. This is the Amamre, or culture, the way of life of Afuraitkaitnit people wherever we exist in the world, aligning every thought, every intention, and every action with divine order. And when we engage that process consistently, we radiate Suban Pa, or good or sacred character. Our essential nature, Su, is surrounded by a structure, Bind, which is good, Pa, or orderly. Naturally, a key component of that functioning is the recognition of the cells who have become cancerous, those cells that seek only to consume and destroy all others in their path. Like 1 out of every 100,000 cells in your body, on average, becomes cancerous at any given time. The reason all of us are not dying of cancer is because the immune and lymphatic systems kills those cells and eradicates them from the body on a regular basis. We must recognize the cells that become cancerous, those who seek only to consume and destroy all others in their path, those cells that are beyond repair. In the divine body of creation, within the human sphere, the cancerous cells are the whites and their offspring. White Americans, white Europeans, white Hispanics, Latinos, Latinas, white Asians, white pseudo-Native Americans, which are simply Siberian, Asian migrants who are not native at all, but invaders, white Arabs, white Hindus, etc. These are the spirits of disorder, those who incarnate without a Ka a soul, a deity in the head region. Those who did not get drawn up to Nyamewaa and Nyame to receive a Ka or a Kaet, because they are repelled from Nyamewaa and Nyame. So when they make their transition, their spirit separates from the body. They dwell in a lower level of the spirit realm, just like a homeless person dwelling outside of homes and in the street and so forth. And then they're drawn back into the womb of one of their descendants 100 or more years later and return into the world. The difference with us is when we make our transition, if we're living in harmony with order, we dwell within Asamando, the realm of the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. We dwell in peace. It's called the Sekhet Hetep, the divine fields of peace, in ancient Kemet, a title for the ancestral realm. Or incarnation, reincarnation, we are first drawn to the Supreme Being, Nyamewaa-Nyame, to renew that divine function. We are given, assigned a soul and so forth. We return to the ancestral realm and then await creation, and then we're drawn into the womb of our descendants. The whites and their offspring do not have those steps. They go from living in the physical world, dying, living in a lower level of the spirit realm, and then returning right back to their criminal blood lineages. They thus incarnate without a Ka, a Kaet, a soul, a deity in the head region. They also incarnate without a Ba or Ba'et, the male and female terms for the spirit, the divine living energy of the creator and creatress, Ra and Ra'et, called Nyonkompon and Nyonkonton and Nankan, Odumare, Oshumare, and Yoruba, and so forth. Da and Ida, Huedo, and Vodun. That divine living energy that animates us, that surges through our spirit body, that solar fire energy that's connected to Ra and Ra'et, a male solar force, the Afurakani male, the female solar force, a child of Ra'et, the creatress, operating from the Afuraitkaitnit female. That divine living energy is that energetic force that allows us to connect our energy with the energy of the Abosom, the deities. And once that link is made, just like when you take a deep breath, the air in your lungs, when you open up your mouth and your passages and so forth, the air in the lungs is connected to the air outside, and now there's a link between the great mass of air outside and the pocket of air in your lungs. And there's a circulation that takes place. When we engage the ritual process, the divine living energy, the Ba or the Ba'et within our spirit bodies is linked with the Ba and the Ba'et of the deities who animate the sun, moon, stars, planets, black substance of space, and so forth. And then we can become possessed through that bridge of energy that we have linked up with the deities. They cross that bridge and possess and communicate with our people, heal our people, teach our people, and so forth. The whites and their offspring do not have a Ba or Ba'et, divine living energy. They simply operate based on residual electromagnetic energy, no different than a paper clip or a piece of, plastic or something like that. Everything has electromagnetic energy just by virtue of the fact that it's on Earth and surrounded by the magnetosphere of Earth. But the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'et and the spirits, their children, when they send a Ba or a Ba'et, a divine living force, to take up a residence in the spirit body of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, and is shown as a bird with the head of the human being. That's a divine force that flies, quote unquote, throughout your body. You can direct that living energy to your arms, legs, reproductive organs, brain, and so forth, and direct it to connect with the energy of the Abosom so you can become possessed and communicate with them through divination and so forth. You can direct that divine force within you through ritual. The whites and their offspring do not have a divinity dwelling within them, carrying a potent force of Tumi or Ashe or power that they can direct, because they repel divinity. So there's no deity taking up residence within them. All they have is the residual electromagnetic energy circulating around the planet, which has no force of divinity within it. So they do not have a Ka or Kayat, a deity dwelling in the head region, the soul, divine consciousness. They do not have a Ba or Baet, a divine living force that they can direct that's animating the spirit body. They thus have no capacity to align with divine order, for they do not have the necessary spiritual organs, Ka, Kayet, Ba, Baet, to align with nor be possessed by the spirits who are the actual embodiments of order in creation, the Abosom. This is the difference between Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Africans, black people, and the whites and their offspring worldwide. This is also what defines them spiritually, physically, and socially as our absolute enemies without exception. Without exception. Just as cancer cells are the enemies of healthy cells without exception. Of course, there is a minute percentage of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, Africans, black people who deliberately engage in disordered behavior consistently. They eventually, as we said earlier, lose their Ka, Kayet, that divinity separates from them, because this deity will not dwell in disorder. Their Ba, or Baet, the spirit, the divine living energy, separates from them as well. Such individuals have now become spirits of disorder like the whites and their offspring. Such individuals who engage in rape, murder, torture, child molestation, domestic abuse, etc., have become cancerous cells who deserve to be eradicated, exterminated, killed, extirpated. They have become our enemies and are grouped with the whites and their offspring. In the Akan tradition in Ghana and Ivory Coast, as well as the Akan tradition in the Western Hemisphere, which is manifest as hoodoo in North America from the Akan term undu, which means medicine from plants, roots, trees, plant life, and so forth. It also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession. Hoodoo is the Akan tradition in North America. Obeah is the Akan tradition in Jamaica. Winti is the Akan tradition in Suriname, and so forth. In our traditions, whether it's on the continent or in the Western Hemisphere, the use of AKRADIN or soul names is central to our cosmology. Our cosmology governs every aspect of our lives, inclusive of our morality. In our Akan culture, the AKRADIN bosom, the Abosom that govern the AKRADIN or soul names, are a specific grouping of Abosom deities who animate the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies which govern our 7-day week. In our book series, AKRADINBOSOM, we prove that the 7-day week originated with ancient Akan people in ancient Kanat, the Kan land, ancient Nubia. Thousands of years ago, we carried the 7-day week from Afurakai into Kanana, which is so-called Canaan, and into Kangi, which is an ancient title of Sumer, and later Akkad or Akkada, upon migration. So we took the 7-day week there. We proved that in our book series, AKRADINBOSOM. These Abosom of the 7-day week also govern specific aspects of creation that govern all natural cycles in creation. Each of these Abosom divinities have their counterparts in the Orisha, Vodou, Arusi, and other Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit traditions with the same function. So we have a chart, of course, where we show the deities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies which animate the 7-day week. And we also show their counterparts in the Orisha tradition, the Vodou tradition, the Ntorotu tradition, and so forth. Now, the specific agreements that our Akan ancestresses and ancestors forged with the Abosom determines the day upon which we are born. And we go into some detail about that. We don't have to go through that portion. In the AKRADINBOSOM book, Volume 2, we show in the book govern not only all the natural cycles, the AKRADINBOSOM in creation, as they use the sun, moon, and planets as shrines, and thus magnifiers and transmitters of their divine energy to earth, but also govern us individually through the circumseptan cycle. The circumseptan cycle is a chronobiological cycle wherein our bodies manifest changes every 7 days, just as the movement of the sun, moon, and planets in relation to earth shift in a perpetual 7-day cycle affecting the atmosphere, seasons, energetic output, and retention of our earth and more. So do they affect the 7-day chronobiological cycle within us on a personal level. This is why our Khan culture revolves around the Nyamewaa-Nyame, or the 7-day week. The influence and input of different AKRADINBOSOM on each day of the week gives us the opportunity to align with these divine regulators of order every day. It also informs our capacity for Suban Pa, good or sacred character, the manifestation of adhering to Nyamewaa-Nyame Nhyehyee divine order in our thoughts, intentions, and actions. The day of the Oriya, the sun, affects, and the manifestation of the sun and its energy affects earth in a specific manner. The day of Ajua, manifestations of Al-Sar and Al-Set operating through the moon that affects and bathes the energy of the earth and affects the earth in a specific manner. The day of Benan, Abena, who operate through the planet Benan, which the whites and offspring called Mars. That energy, when bathing the earth on that day, affects the earth in a specific manner. And each day of the week is affected by the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that are animated by the Abosom that govern them. Each day has its own character. Each day carries its own energy complex when that energy is bathing the earth, received by the magnetosphere and sent throughout the planet. It's not to the exclusion of the other solar, lunar, and planetary bodies on a specific day, but it has a dominant influence. That means each day of the week carries its own energetic signature. Each day of the week affects our body in specific ways. Each day of the week is dominated by specific Abosom, male and female, and the character and the principles and values of Suban Pa, good character, sacred character, and so forth. Those principles are informed by the energy that governs each day of the week. Each day of the week, we have the opportunity to align ourselves with the energy of the Abosom that dominate that day, and thus renew and replenish our Suban power, good character, every day of the week throughout the course of our lives. Our behaviors, a reflection of our knowledge, inclinations, as well as conditionings, proper and improper, can be categorized according to the Abosom who govern the related aspects of creation. This is why discordant, disordered behavior, immoral behavior can be identified in the absolute sense. Truth and morality are not relative. So there are 11 Abosom, male and female, who govern the 7 days of the week, and the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern the 7 days of the week. And so we show the different behaviors that we reject that are a violation of these different divinities. So all the different behaviors that are objectionable, immoral, can be categorized according to the Abosom that governs specific days of the week in certain natural cycles, and how they are in violation of those deities functioning, and how those deities will suppress us in that disordered behavior if we engage in that. Stealing, for example, is in violation of the functioning of Awusi and Ajua, Al-Sar and Al-Set as regulators of the harmonious and interdependent functioning of the Abosom upholding divine order. Al-Sar and Al-Set operating through the posterior and anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, the master gland in the body, sending out hormonal secretions that regulate the functions of the various other glands in the body, having a regulatory function. The same in creation, Al-Sar and Al-Set, regulating order regulating the functions of the various Abosom, meaning the king and queen mother and so forth, placed at the head of the Abosom in that regard, regarding natural cycles on earth and in creation. When they're regulating harmonious and interdependent functioning, when you engage in stealing, that's a violation of the regulation of harmonious interdependent functioning. So stealing is a violation of the functioning of Al-Sar and Al-Set in creation and Al-Sar, Al-Set in your body, Al-Sar and Al-Set within the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community, as we depend upon them and align with them so we can learn what harmonious regulatory order is and how to align our thoughts, intentions, and actions with regulatory order. If you steal, you take yourself outside of regulatory order. So you're out of harmony with Abusi and Adwa, Al-Sar and Al-Set. Drinking, smoking, and drug use, that includes smoking, includes cigarettes, cigars, as well as marijuana. We did an article on Ajimi Fosim, which is talking about irrational behavior, the idiocy of rationalizing, it's imbecilic behavior, the idiocy of rationalizing marijuana use. Of course, the whites in our spring put forward false studies to brainwash the ignorant amongst us to believe that marijuana is okay. Imagine them putting out a series of studies where they said there's a new discovery, crack cocaine and heroin actually is the same as vitamin C, and you need to take as much crack cocaine and heroin as possible. So all black communities, we need to put crack cocaine and heroin in all of the stores so you can give it to your children and you need to take it every day. You wouldn't be stupid enough to accept that. You would know that the reason that they're putting forward false studies like that is to destroy you in the present and to destroy your sperm and ovum cells and your immune system, so even your future children will be destroyed as well. The same is true of marijuana, which destroys sperm cells, ovum cells, widens the synaptic cleft in the brain, and therefore slows down transmissions, all kinds of disorder. It, of course, creates lung cancer and so forth, has more carcinogens than regular cigarette smoke and so forth. The whites in our spring want us to engage in drug use. This is why there is a push towards the legalization or decriminalization of drugs. It has nothing to do with sentencing disparities in the pseudo-justice system. Of course, there were sentencing disparities. The whites in our spring wanted to incarcerate 2 to 3 generations of our people unjustly. And we're fighting back and trying to, expose the criminality within the criminal so-called justice system. And after decades of that, then the whites in our spring pretend like they're going to acquiesce and start making changes in the criminal justice system and decriminalizing drugs and so forth, because they say, well, there was disparities and we should have never done that, and they act like they're apologizing. First, they destroy you by incarcerating our people intergenerationally. Then they make you beg them to decriminalize drugs, and then they release people from prison, decriminalize drugs so you can have a whole nation of drug addicts, inclusive of alcoholics, heroin addicts, cocaine addicts, marijuana addicts, and so forth. And we also talk about the negative effect that marijuana has on us spiritually, on melanin, how it degrades melanin, makes us hooked on drugs quicker and stay hooked longer because we're melanin dominant, but also opening you up to the foolish, disordered projections of disordered spirits. You're more receptive to those discarnate relatives and non-relatives who are in disorder when you're engaged in drug use, inclusive of marijuana. So when you see people smoking and everything else, they're the ones who have these foolish rationalizations, pseudo-metaphysical philosophies, pure stupidity, because they're more receptive to the misinformation being received by discarnate relatives and non-relatives, because it weakens your spiritual immunity just like it weakens your physical immunity. And we've done a whole broadcast on that. And of course, we have the Akumasa substance abuse abstinence approach to eradicating substance abuse through ancestral religion. But drinking, smoking, and drug use impairs the body and immunity, thus directly violating the functioning of Benna and Abinna, Heru, Bedeti, and Sekhmet, Ogun, and Iyamiabeni, Ogu, and Ananu, the deities that regulate immunity within and the lymphatic system within the great divine body as well as within your body. So when you engage something that attacks immunity, you're attacking the shrines of Benna and Abena, the divinities within your body. You're out of harmony with them. These are the divine immune and lymphatic organs in creation. The same is true of gluttony, overeating, and so forth, placing undue pressure upon our organs and systems. When you decide, because of emotional distress and so forth, that you're going to force certain foods that you don't even need in your body, or an abundance of food and forcing your body to suffer, placing undue pressure upon your organs and systems because you haven't aligned yourself spiritually and you're allowing yourself to be buried by depression and so forth. And we talked about depression and depression, where you're affected negatively by discarnate relatives and non-relatives, and their discordant energy puts pressure on your spirit body, and you feel weighted down and weak and melancholy and so forth. When you engage in ancestral religious practices, you can repel those weak, perverse spirits, and that heaviness is lifted from you. This is part of the process. The average psychologist can never teach you that. All they're going to do is bring you into a session, talk to you for 40 minutes or so on a weekly basis, sometimes for years. If you don't, quote-unquote, act right or respond to their weak pseudo-therapy, then they'll place you on medication or send you to a psychiatrist and you have medication management. They'll place you on some psychotropic medication, which destroys your melanin, alters your brain waves and so forth, and synapses in a very negative fashion. Because they have no capacity to say, there's a specific discarnate relative spirit that's hanging around you. All you have to do is establish a shrine. You can get rid of that spirit in 15 minutes, as opposed to going to therapy for 10 years, making no progress. But that's part of that process of weakening your immunity, whether it's drug abuse or gluttony that weakens the immunity, that is a violation of the shrines of the Abosom, Benna, and Abena within your body. Promiscuity, interracialism, dissexuality, which we call homosexuality because dis means not. So homosexuality is really dissexuality, meaning sexuality is not occurring. Promiscuity, interracialism, dissexuality, homosexuality, other forms of sexual deviance, lust, masturbation, pornography, and more, and sexual abuse are violations of the functioning of AMANSEM and Afi, which is men, and Hathor is mispronounced by Egyptologists. This Orisha Oko and Oshun Ibudi Oko. It is men and Afi, or AMANSEM and Afi in the Akan tradition. It is Azaka and Erzuli in the Vodun tradition. They regulate the complementary union and divine balance of the Afurakani man and Afuraitkaitnit woman. They govern the reproductive structures, but also the fusion of complementary opposites, the central attraction that is the precursor to procreative activity and copulation, and the fusion of the sperm and ovum and the conception of a child, meaning the return of an ancestor and ancestors. That complementary fusion is governed by AMANSEM and Afi. And AMANSEM is just a title of the deity Men, which is different from the great god Amen or Amen-Ra, but the deity Men, he's sometimes called AMANSEM as a title. But Men and Afi, or Men and Heru, they're governing the fallopian tube structure and so forth, and epididymis, and the conception and the fusion of complementary opposites, sexuality and so forth. When you engage in sexual deviance, then you're in violation, and you're defecating basically on the shrines of these divinities. You're denigrating the shrines of these divinities. You're desecrating the shrines of these divinities within your body, within your spirit. You're out of alignment with the forces in nature who govern the fusion of complementary opposites. That's promiscuity, interracialism, that includes the white Europeans, white Americans, white Hispanics, white Latinos, white Asians, white Hindus, white Arabs, and so forth. Non-Afurakani people do not balance us. It is impossible for them to balance us on any level. If it's not an Afurakani man or Afuraitkaitnit woman, it is a spirit of disorder, one of the whites in their offspring. And when you connect with the spirit of disorder, you're bringing disorder into your life, no different than taking cocaine or heroin and so forth. Promiscuity is a similar process. It's a sexual deviance. You're engaged in disorder. AMANSEM and Heteru are directing you to fuse with your complement in a balanced, harmonious fashion so that you can generate the kind of energy necessary to execute your divine function in the world, because these Abosom, these deities know what your function in the world is. But then you reject that and run towards somebody else and a number of different people and seek to engage in lustful activity. You're rejecting the pull of the actual divinities, and you're going in a different direction. And they're not governing promiscuity. They never have and never will. They only govern the fusion of complementary opposites, the complementary individual that you should be with, whose divine function harmonizes with yours through that natural state. They only fuse complementary opposites in harmony with divine order. When you engage in any form of sexual deviance, whether it's promiscuity, interracialism, dissexuality, homosexuality, other forms of sexual deviance, inclusive of general lust or misguided desire, masturbation, pornography, and more, as well as sexual abuse, you're violating the divinities that govern the process of generating the energy that brings ancestors back into the world, that reproductive, procreative activity. Skin bleaching, quote-unquote cosmetic surgery procedures, implants, injections, hair straightening, fake hair, the desire for such images and practices by men and women are also violations of the functioning of men and Afi, men and Heru, as they regulate our capacity to perceive and embrace beauty, the manifestation of order, and expression of complementary balance. When you recognize what beauty is, and we did a broadcast on this recently, beauty is the expression of harmony. Harmony, in reality, is the manifestation of divine order. When something is orderly, whether it's sanctioned by the Supreme Being to come into being, when you have different elements like a painting or musical notes or movements and dance and so forth, and Heru governs the coming together in a harmonious way of the sounds or the colors or the shapes or the movements, where she's behind the harmonious fusion of those things, then it's a manifestation of order. The finished product, whether it's the artistic product or the relationship, the fusion of complementary opposites of an Afurakani male, Afuraitkaitnit female from different clans, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit ancestral clans coming together in a harmonious way, or whatever it is, when it's sanctioned by Heru and men, then it is a manifestation of order. That's what harmony is. If it's disharmonious, it's because it's a manifestation of disorder, not sanctioned by the Supreme Being, not governed by Heru. But if it's a manifestation of order, then it's harmonious. And the beauty that exceeds or exudes from that is an expression of that divine harmony. If you try to embrace the false idea that the whites and their offspring are giving you what beauty is, then you're embracing a standard that is disharmonious, that is in repulsion and repulsed by Heru. You're going against the actual forces in nature, and you're seeking to align with disharmony, the expression of disorder. So when you look at white skin, that's not a manifestation of harmony, that's a manifestation of disease. When you look at the features of the whites and their offspring, including straight hair and so forth, that's a manifestation of degeneration, disfiguration, weakness, perversity. Their bone structure, their facial features, their phenotype, white skin, their weak, limp fur, which is misnomered as hair, that is not a manifestation of order. It is a manifestation of disorder. It is not harmony, it is disharmony. It is not beauty, the expression of harmony. It is ugliness, perversity, the expression of disharmony. So you cannot incorporate in your mindset that perversity manifests as beauty. You're embracing falsehood. That's no different than taking cocaine and acting like it's a vitamin. You're destroying yourself and ingesting disorder and disordering your thoughts, intentions, and actions, and creating a disfigurement within your spirit. The same with cosmetic, quote-unquote, surgery, implants, and so forth. And, of course, we talked about our Black Swan Life movement, talking about the intrinsic nature and elegance of the swan as a manifestation of divine beauty. So when you have sisters who have that natural, slender physique, that's a manifestation of Het Heru in that expression. There are different expressions of Het Heru, and one of them is that swan. A swan would not be told that, hey, you need to receive some neck implants or else you're not going to be beautiful. You can't have that slender neck. You're going to go need to get some implants. You're going to need to get some injections or you're not beautiful. If somebody said that, you would recognize them to be a fool, an idiot, because the swan was designed to manifest that slender physique. That's a manifestation of one of the forms of Het Heru. Our sisters, the various body types that can be categorized according to the 7 days of the week. There are 7 different major body types according to the nature of the Abosom that govern the 7 days of the week. Some who retain more water will have a fuller form with regard to breasts and behind and so forth. Some who retain less water will have a more slender, petite form or a more athletic form and so forth, each one according to the fiery divinity that they are daughter of or the watery divinity they are daughter of. Children of Sekhmet are more taut or strong or more athletic. Children of Aset are more, a little bit more round and so forth with regard to retaining water and so forth, more soft and nurturing. So it depends on the nature of the energy complex. You will manifest just like animals. You have certain animals who are thin, certain animals who are more muscular, certain animals who are a little bit more rounder. That's based on the nature of the energy complex and what totem of what divinity they are representative of. So when we have ancestral culture, we can properly categorize ourselves and know who's who and recognize the sefel or the beauty in each different specific category. And when people are living in harmony with their ka and kaet, then their diet and their exercise regimen and their sleep patterns and so forth are in harmony with order, so their body will take the natural form that it should take. They won't be overweight, they won't be underweight. They will settle into the natural form that they are, and whatever form that is, whether they're tall, slender, short, petite, athletic, whatever the form is, that's the natural form, and it's a manifestation of beauty. If we desire anything outside of that, that's men and women, then we're violating the divinities, Het Heru, and men. And very often the only reason that Afuraitkaitnit women engage in these behaviors that are self-destructive and embracing the standard, pseudo-standard of beauty of the whites and their offspring, it comes from conditioning initially, because we're taught that if you're taught that God is a white man, that fictional cartoon character, dissexual faggot Jesus, who never existed of any race or any form whatsoever, but if you're worshiping and praying to that cracker, then you believe that's divine, and you believe that everything else is inferior. And if you're taught that from the time you're a child, whether you're in school or just in the society, whether you're a quote-unquote Christian by fake religion or a Christian by culture, just by living in white culture, where you don't even identify with Christianity, but it's so infused in every aspect of white culture that that's what it is, you're still believing in white pseudo-supremacy, and you're conditioned from the gate. So that's the major influence on the minds of our people. But the next level of influence is when the Afurakani male is so brainwashed and self-hating that he only desires the white female or a black female that aspires to look like a white female or moving in that direction. If we didn't have so many Afurakani males embracing the perverse pseudo-standard of beauty of the whites and their offspring, the vast majority of our sisters would not go through the process and take the time and money to burn up their hair or bleach their skin or get injections and have implant parties where they're meeting at people's houses and paying money and risking their lives and their health to inject their breasts and behind with substances that will end up killing them and so forth. They wouldn't be engaging in most of that nonsense if Afurakani males were Afurakani men and they embrace the natural standard of beauty and beg the sisters to embrace that. That would take a great deal of pressure off of every Afuraitkaitnit woman and girl. They know they can just grow up, have their own natural features, have their own natural hair, have their own natural bodies, and never have to waste any time dealing with any pseudo expression or standard of beauty. So this is why we say all these different behaviors and the desire for such images and practices by men and women are also violations of the functioning of AMANSEM and Afi, as they regulate our capacity to perceive and embrace beauty, the manifestation of order, and expression of complementary values. Physical abuse, child abuse, and verbal abuse are violations of the functioning of Yao, Ya, and Abba, who are called Heru, the son of Asar and Aset, Wachet, and Nekabet. They're called Shango, Oya, and Oba in Yoruba tradition. They're called Hebioso and Avejida and Ayaba in Vodun. When you engage in abuse, whether it's physical abuse, child abuse, verbal abuse, you're violating the functioning of these divinities because they are those who administer justice and relentlessly challenge and fight and combat disorder and punish its purveyors physically. So the ones who actually punish disorder and its purveyors, relentlessly challenge disorder and punish its purveyors, you're in violation of them when you're punishing and abusing physically and verbally those within your community that should never be physically abused or punished. So you're in violation of these divinities, and you deserve to suffer for that violation. When there's child abuse and, spousal abuse and all that, if you get killed in the process for abusing, then you deserve to get killed. We don't give a damn about Negroes who abuse children and women. You deserve to be killed. And we have no love for Negroes who engage in that. We do not, as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, love all of our people. We love our people who are engaged in order. We hate those of our people who become spirits of disorder, and we only seek their extermination because they are no longer part of us. They are cancerous. They're no different than the whites and their offspring. They deserve to be stomped out, extirpated. Lying and the embrace of pseudo-religions and pseudo-philosophies are violations of the functioning of Awuku and Akua, who are that's in the Akan tradition. They're called Set and Nebet-Het in ancient Kemet. They're called Eshu and Agberu, and she is the wife of Eshu. In the Yoruba tradition, they're called Legba and Koni Koni in Vodun. Awuku and Akua, Set and Nebet-Het are those who carry our prayers, invocations, and our ritual offerings to the Abosom and Nationalism, the deities and ancestral spirits, and Nyamewaa-Nyame, the Supreme Being, and bring their messages and guidance and empowerment back to us in return. The communicator, the messenger, and the courieress. That's Awuku and Akua, Set and Nebet-Het, Eshu and Agberu, Legba and Koni Koni. The lines of communication and offering are distorted through lying and the embrace of false ideas, concepts, beliefs, etc., which is a manifestation of lying. This is all distortion. Embracing pseudo-religions, inclusive of fictional cartoon characters who never existed of any race or in any form, inclusive of Jesus, Yeshua, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Jacob, Esau, Moses, Aaron, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Allah, Muhammad, Yahweh, Buddha, Brahman, etc., and embracing pseudo-philosophies, integration, loving our enemies, unconditional love, messianic nationalism, all of these pseudo-philosophies of pure stupidity, and all of it is lying because it's rejecting the expansive and contractive poles of divine order. If you're not embracing divine order and you're communicating something and embracing a philosophy or concept that's not expressive and impressive of divine order, you're engaged in lying. Maranechi, divine law, love, and divine hate. These are the two poles of order. The world comes into being through law, the expression of order. Law and love is the same word in our ancestral languages and culture. The world comes into being through law, which is the expression of order. The world is sustained through hate, the impression of order. Through law, we express order. Through hate, we impress upon creation the parameters within which we need to operate. Anything operating outside of those parameters is stamped out. Hate impresses order. Law expresses order. Your immune system, lymphatic systems are the agents of the divine hate of the Supreme Being. In our book, AMANNE, Divine Law, Love, and Divine Hate, we show the etymology of the word hate, which is not coming from the Proto-Indo-European language phylum, which in their languages they will say hate comes from ket, which means to break or destroy. That's the Proto-Indo-European so-called root, but that root is not Proto-Indo-European. It comes from ancient Kemet and Kanat. The term ket means to break or destroy, and it shows the medut, the hieroglyph of the man with a stick breaking or destroying. When you hate something, you reject, repel, destroy. You're destroying disorder for the maintenance and integrity of the divine order. Hate is divine. There are deities of divine hate, that is Heru Behudet, which is Benna, Ogun, Ogu, and Sekhmet. She's also called Setchimana Khan, Abena. She's also called Iyami Abeni in the Yoruba tradition. She's called Ananu in Vodun. These are the male and female forces, the contractive pole of divine order, which is hate, where law, quote-unquote love, is the expansive pole of order. Through love or law, you express or you incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities you need to incorporate to harmonize with divine order. Through hate, you reject, repel, repulse those things, objects, deeds, and entities you need to reject, to repel, to repulse, in order to restore balance to your thoughts, intentions, and actions, and restore order and maintain the integrity of order. Without an immune and lymphatic system, your body falls apart, because those agents of disorder will come in and destroy everything. But you have a line of defense that maintains the integrity of the organism. That is the immune and lymphatic system governed by Benna and Abena, Heru, Behudet, and Setchima, Sekhmet. That's the divine hate, the deities of divine hate, whereas the deities of divine law or love, because law and love is the same concept, are Ma'ah and Ma'at. The male deity is Ma'ah, the female deity is Ma'at. We did a whole 5-part series on the god Ma'ah and his relationship to Ma'at. And of course, so-called elders and teachers and so-called culturalists and people calling themselves scholars and experts promoting themselves as that falsely have been misinforming the community for decades, talking about Ma'at, but never mentioning the deity Ma'at one time, because they still have a Eurocentric approach to ancestral culture wrapped in Afrocentric jargon. If you're not engaged in ancestral religious practice born of your blood circles that have been maintained for hundreds of years here in the Western Hemisphere and communicating directly with these divinities, you're not going to know who Ma'ah is or Ma'at is, and you won't be able to find them in the text and what their functions are. But when we communicate directly with them, as we've been doing for thousands of years, inclusive in North America, we know exactly who they are, and we can identify them in the text. The same text that these fools have had for years and have been, quote-unquote, teaching from, yet the deity Ma'ah is right there in the text, and they look right past it because of their Eurocentric mindset. Yet they promote themselves as elders, teachers, babas, priests, priestesses, all of those titles, PhDs, all those titles are absolutely meaningless, foolish, nonsensical titles that have no value. If you're not engaged in real culture, ancestral, authentic religious culture, you're not engaged in anything. So we say when we do not embrace the contractive pole of divine order, divine hate, the repulsion of disorder, we compromise our immunity and place ourselves in the position of suffering under white rule. This is in contradiction to functioning harmoniously, which includes the eradication of our enemies and reestablishing our independence, securing ourselves in our sovereignty. And of course, we have a manifestation of that, whether it was Okunfo Yao, Nat Turner, who rose up, raised an army to wage war against the whites in the Arab Spring and massacred them, sent shockwaves throughout the whole South and so forth, fearing that other black people would rise up. And of course, we were inspired to rise up. Okunfo Kwabena, Denmark, VC, organizing over 9,000 black people to take over Charleston, South Carolina, and so forth. You have Ogufo Geb, which is Gabriel Prosser, organizing over 1,000 people to take over in Virginia and so forth. The Gullah Wars, where our people waged war against the United States government for decades. They were never drugged back into enslavement. The Gullah Wars bankrupted the United States Treasury. The United States sent the U.S. Army down into Florida to attack the Gullah, and they were not able to fully defeat them. The Gullah Wars forced America into the Civil War, and we forced the end of enslavement because we waged war powered by our ancestral religion. And then you have contemporary expressions of that. Those who manifest ancestral religious practice are those who actually get the job done. So you have Okunfo Ma'aka, so-called Micah Xavier Johnson. In one day, he goes into Dallas and massacres 5 of the enemy, the beasts, the cops. 10 days later, Okunfo Setep-Nra, Alsar Setep-Nra, so-called Gavin Long, who was in Dallas on the same day that Okunfo Ma'aka had his brilliant victory. 10 days later, Okunfo Alsar Setep-Nra was in Louisiana in Baton Rouge and took out 3 cops there. So within 10 days, they took out 8 of the enemy. They both practice ancestral religion, guided by their ancestresses and ancestors, to stand up and massacre those crackers who have been killing our people. They took out more beasts successfully in 10 days than pseudo-revolutionaries who take photo ops with guns and red, black, and green flags and bullhorns have taken out in 30 years. People who practice ancestral religion put numbers up on the board. They get the job done because they're governed by their ancestresses and ancestors, and they look forward to going to the ancestral realm after they get the job done. They removed 8 of the enemy who will never, ever again be able to oppress and falsely imprison and torture black people. So we have people doing real work and Negroes who are just having photo ops. But we're talking about real culture. And of course, we have our book, Modern Achieve, Divine Law, Love, and Divine Hate. So these are just some of the behaviors which are rejected by Afuraitkaitnit Africans of Odwiraman, the Purified Nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. This rejection is a reflection of our ancestrally inherited morality. This is Suban Pa manifest, an expression of Nyamewaa-Nyame Nhyehyee divine order in operation every moment of every day. And moreover, because of the interdependence of the functioning of the Abosom, the deities in creation, the violation of the laws governed by one Abosom overlaps with the violation of laws governed by the other Abosom as well. So when you violate the laws of the divinities, you're out of harmony with order, and you're not manifesting Suban Pa. We have morality, which is rooted in the functioning of the deities in creation. We have an ancestral religious conviction to manifest divine order. Okay, so we are, if you want to listen beyond, I should have said this earlier, beyond 10:30, you must call in very quickly. You only have about a minute to call in. The number is 646-787-8155. Only the people on the phone will be able to listen beyond 10:30. We're not going to go too much longer beyond 10:30 because we're basically done. But for those who have been listening, we have our Amarukafo Adebisa Ajumadi African American Ancestral Religious Divination Project film documentary that we're working on. If you support the work we're doing, we want to try to complete this film within the next 30 days. We've had a crowdfunding effort for the past 11 months. Go to that page, support the work that we're doing, and yet I'll say we thank you for that. And as a matter of fact, so the piece just online is just cut off, and only the people on the phone line can hear. So what we're going to do is, if you have any questions or comments regarding this subject matter, send us an email with the question or comment. we'll be able to answer that, and then we'll also address it in the next broadcast. We're going to go ahead and end the broadcast here because it originally was slated from 9 o'clock to 10:30. So we're right at that mark. We just wanted to go through these different behaviors that we do not accept as part of Odwiraman, the Purified Nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere, how morality is rooted in our interfacing with the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the forces in nature. So we have morality that is rooted in our relationship with creation, with the Supreme Being and the organs within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. Morality is connected to divine order. That is our nature as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. When we have a strong moral and ethical foundation, then we build strong Afurakani men, Afuraitkaitnit women. That leads to strong Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit marriages, which leads to strong families and children who develop strong families which connect with other strong families within the community, and then we can build and establish a nation-building restoration process. The root of that is divine order. The expression of divine order in our behavior is Suban Pa, which is sacred character. That is the key to AMANNE, Nationism, the purification of nationalism. So, again, yet I'll say we thank you for tuning in to the broadcast, and Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. Hit that.